Why was she the only one still standing when the room emptied? The briefing had ended 10 minutes ago. Chairs scraped back. Folders snapped shut. Boots stomped across the tiled floor, the sound fatting down the hall as laughter and relief spilled into the corridor. Men spoke of chow, of sleep, of tomorrow's leave. The tension had bled out of them the moment the colonel dismissed the room. But she remained, alone, motionless. Captain Mara Ellison stood at the far end of the table, her hands pressed flat against the scarred wood as if anchoring herself to something no one else could feel. Her eyes weren't on the maps pinned to the board or the grainy photographs stacked at her elbow. She was staring through the glass window, watching storm clouds fold into one another above the base. The others hadn't noticed her silence. They rarely did. To them she was just another body in uniform, a seat in row 9, a shadow who didn't raise her voice, who didn't crack jokes after a briefing, who didn't fight for a louder place at the table. She had mastered invisibility, learned how to carry herself so that men glanced past her, their eyes sliding to the next face. It was safer that way. But invisibility came at a cost, because when you were ignored, no one noticed when you broke. A voice at the doorway pulled her from the clouds. "You're still here." It was Lieutenant Harper, his tone casual, already distracted. He leaned in just long enough to see her standing there, folder tucked under her arm, before shrugging and disappearing into the hall. She didn't answer, didn't move. She exhaled, the breath slow, careful, like letting go of something fragile. Her name was Mara Ellison. Call sign, hollow, not because she was empty, but because she carried what others couldn't, the grief they buried, the weight they shoved aside. Somehow it always found its way into her hands, and she had never let it drop. This mission would test that more than any before. The orders had been delivered without ceremony, a single folder, thin, lighter than the gravity it carried. Inside, the face of a missing intelligence officer, Daniel Reed. His file was nothing remarkable, age 37, years in the field, a man who lived his life in coded transmissions and false passports. His value wasn't in who he was, but in what he carried. Names, routes, coordinates. The kind of knowledge that could collapse entire networks if it fell into the wrong hands. And it had. The photograph showed him bound, bruised, but alive. His captors were a faction known not for mercy, but for silence. They didn't negotiate. They didn't broadcast. Men disappeared into their grasp like water into sand. The mission was clear: retrieve him before his silence broke. It was the kind of task where a plan mattered less than trust, where each breath you took depended on the man or woman at your side. And yet, as Mara studied the names on the roster, dread coiled tight in her chest. Avery, Harper, Torres, 3 others pulled from scattered units, capable on paper but strangers in reality, a patchwork team stitched together for a mission no one wanted. She traced the names with her finger. Each one carried something heavy: arrogance, fatigue, untested fear. She could already see the cracks before the first step was taken. And she wondered, not for the first time, why command had chosen her. Why, when there were louder names, longer records, brighter medals? Why her? The answer lived at the edges of her memory, in a place she didn't want to return to. Not yet. The air on the tarmac clung heavy, damp with the promise of rain. Engines roared in the distance, a vibration that crawled up through the soles of her boots. Mara adjusted the strap of her rifle, fingers steady, motions practiced. Beside her, Sergeant Avery filled the silence with sound. He talked too loud, joked too easily, laughed too hard. But underneath, Mara heard the crack in his voice. Men like Avery performed their courage, and the louder they performed, the more fragile it usually was. "Were you from Hollow?" he asked suddenly, shouting over the thrum of the rotors. She kept her eyes forward, scanning the dark stretch of runway. "Nowhere that matters." He laughed as if she'd made a joke. She hadn't. Because the truth wasn't about where she was from. It was about who she'd lost. A father who had never forgiven her for enlisting. A brother who'd never come back from a desert on the other side of the world. She carried his dog tags hidden close to her skin, a weight no one else saw. This mission wasn't just orders, it was debt, to the dead, to the forgotten, to herself. When the rotors tore into the night sky, conversation stopped. Noise replaced it, a consuming roar that left no room for words. Mara sat with her back against the metal wall of the bird, helmet shadowing her eyes. She let the vibration sink into her chest, her heartbeat falling into rhythm with the machine. Across from her, Harper tapped his boot, restless nerves bleeding through his silence. Avery cracked his knuckles, one after the other, sharp little echoes that filled the gaps. The youngest, Specialist Torres, clutched a small silver cross, his lips moving though no sound escaped. Mara watched them all, quiet, every twitch, every silence, every false smile. She measured them not with judgment but with the knowledge that before sunrise one of them might not be here. The pilot's voice crackled in her headset. 30 out. Her grip tightened. 30 minutes until insertion. 30 minutes until the silence ended. And still the question gnawed at her. Why her? Why this mission? She knew, deep down she knew, but she wasn't ready to face the answer, not while the ground was still beneath her. When boots hit Earth, the night swallowed them whole. No moon, no stars, just the press of black on black, broken only by the hiss of wind through the tall grass. They moved in a line, bent low, shadows among shadows. Mara placed herself second in the file, not leading, not trailing. She liked the middle. It let her feel the team's pulse without showing how closely she watched them. A barn loomed ahead, broken roof sagging, wood bleached gray by years of weather. Harper raised a fist. Halt. They crouched in silence, breath fogging in the cold air. Wind whispered through the cracks. A loose sheet of tin rattled, then fell still. Torres' whisper cut the dark. We shouldn't stop here. But Mara knew why Harper had. His breathing had changed. Too fast, too shallow. He wasn't scanning the barn. He was stalling, doubting. Fear slipping through the cracks. When his eyes flicked back to hers, she caught it. A flash of panic he tried to bury. She said nothing. Her silence was its own answer, but silence never comforted the weak. The first shot broke before they even saw the muzzle flash. A crack split the air, sharp and final. Wood splintered inches from Harper's head. He flinched back hard, hitting the ground. Torres dropped flat, heart hammering in his throat. Avery cursed under his breath, crawling for cover. Mara didn't flinch. She pressed low, scanning the dark, ears tuned to rhythm. One shot, a pause, another, deliberate, patient, not panic fire, not chance. This was a hunter. Her stomach tightened. The pattern was too familiar. The pauses, the precision. She knew this signature. And suddenly, the storm in her chest wasn't just about Reed, the missing officer. It wasn't about the roster of strangers at her back. It was about something older, something she had buried. Her hand steadied on the rifle, breath slowed, eyes narrowed to a slit. She whispered to herself, words swallowed by the wind. Not this time. The others didn't notice the shift in her shoulders, the way her stillness grew sharper, heavier. They didn't know that the woman they barely trusted had just recognized the ghost waiting for them in the dark. And she wasn't sure if she was ready to face him. How could a sound feel like memory? The crack of that rifle wasn't just a bullet. It was a ghost, a sound Mara had heard years ago in a different country under a different sky. Her body recognized it before her mind admitted the truth. She pressed flat against the ground, cheek near the damp earth, ears straining through the silence that followed. Every nerve burned alive, because she wasn't just hearing an enemy tonight. She was hearing him. The sniper in the dark wasn't a stranger. He was the shadow she had never outrun. Contact front, Avery barked, panic splitting his voice. He fired blindly into the dark, muzzle flash bursting like lightning. Harper scrambled behind the rotting wall of the barn, chest heaving. Torres clutched his cross so tight the metal dug into his palm. Mara didn't move, didn't shoot, she listened. Another shot cracked, clean, deliberate. It tore through Avery's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He cried out, the sound raw, human, ugly. Blood sprayed across the dirt. Mara slid across the ground, dragging Avery into the shadow of the barn before another round found him. Her hands were steady, voice low. "Stay down. Pressure here. Breathe with me." Avery's teeth clenched. His eyes were wild, fighting the reality closing in on him. But her calm anchored him, at least enough to stop the shaking. She lifted her head, scanning the black beyond the field. One shooter, distant, patient, watching them panic like prey. And she whispered again, quieter this time, "I know you." The others didn't hear. They were too busy with their fear. Harper's voice cracked. "We need to move, we can't stay pinned." "Shut up," Mara snapped, sharper than she intended. Silence dropped heavy. For the first time since the briefing, they looked at her, really looked. Torres' whisper broke it. "What do we do?" She breathed once, twice. The decision pressed against her chest. If she told them the truth, if she admitted she knew the shooter, their trust would crack wide open. They'd see betrayal where there was none. They'd see weakness. So she didn't tell them, not yet. "We don't move until I say," she answered instead. Voice low, steady, carrying weight that made Harper's protest die on his lips. She peered into the dark, remembering. Years ago there had been another mission, another team, another sniper covering the field. His name was Elias Kine. He had been her brother's closest friend. He had taught her things her instructors never bothered to, how to breathe with the earth, how to count wind not by instruments but by feeling it crawl across your skin, how to wait, patient as stone, until the world forgot you were even there. And then betrayal, a mission gone wrong, a bullet that should never have been fired, a body she still saw in her sleep, her brother's body. The sniper in the dark wasn't just an enemy. He was Elias, and if he was here, aiming at her team, it meant he had chosen the other side long ago. The night stretched, no more shots, just silence, waiting, a hunter letting his prey sweat. Mara's mind raced in stillness. If she engaged, she risked exposing her knowledge. If she didn't, he'd bleed them one by one. Her radio hissed, the pilot's voice crackled faint. "Status." She clicked once, no words, she wouldn't risk sound. Avery groaned, clutching his shoulder. Torres whispered prayers between clenched teeth. Harper's hands shook as he reloaded a rifle he hadn't even fired properly. They were unraveling. Mara closed her eyes. She remembered something Elias had once told her back when trust still meant something. The first shot's never the kill, it's the invitation. He wants to see how you move. That's when he decides who dies first. And suddenly she understood. He wasn't just hunting, he was watching her. The wind shifted, a small, almost imperceptible brush of air against her cheek. She lifted her rifle, slow, silent. She didn't aim where the others would expect, not at the barn, not at the obvious ridges. She aimed at a shadow on the far tree line, an indentation in the grass no one else would see. Her breath steadied. In-out pause, she didn't fire, not yet. Instead, she whispered into the dark, so low no one else would hear, "I know it's you." For a moment, nothing. Then, impossibly, across hundreds of yards, a single glint of glass flickered, scope catching light, just for her. It was an answer. Harper hissed, "We're wasting time, Reed's out there every second." "Shut up," she said again, quieter but heavier. This time, Harper's anger burned in silence. She checked Avery's wound. Clean through, no bone. He could move if he had to. She pressed his hand over the bandage. "Don't let go." Then she looked at Torres. The boy's eyes were wide, terrified, his cross cutting into his skin. She softened her tone. "You stay with him, don't fire unless I say." Torres nodded, too fast, desperate to obey someone who sounded like they knew what they were doing. Harper opened his mouth again, but Mara didn't give him the chance. She fixed him with a stare sharp enough to cut. "You cover rear, nothing else, got it?" Something in her gaze pinned him. He swallowed, nodded. She turned back to the field. Her chest tightened with the weight of choice. To move meant to expose them. To stay meant to bleed slow. There was only one way forward. "I'll draw him," she said finally. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her, confusion, fear, disbelief. Avery coughed a laugh through pain. "You'll what?" She didn't repeat herself. Instead, she slid her rifle strap across her chest, adjusted her pack, and began crawling into the open. Every inch forward was a gamble. Grass whispered against her sleeves. Mud clung to her gloves. She could feel the sky pressing down, thick with silence. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat softened until it felt like it belonged to the earth itself. She counted seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then the crack. A bullet kissed the dirt inches from her hand, spraying soil across her face. She didn't flinch. She kept crawling. Another shot, closer, deliberate. He wasn't missing. He was playing, reminding her of old lessons. Her lips pressed tight. Rage burned, but beneath it grief. For her brother. For the trust once held in the man behind that scope. She reached the low ridge, pressed flat. Slowly, she raised her rifle. Her scope aligned with his shadow, too far for certainty but enough for memory. She could almost see the set of his shoulders, the tilt of his head. She didn't fire, not yet. Her finger rested on the trigger. But her heart remembered a time when she had trusted this man with her life, when her brother had laughed with him like a second sibling. And she knew that if she fired now, it wouldn't just be an enemy falling. It would be the last thread tying her to the man her brother used to be. Her breath trembled. For the first time tonight, her hand shook. A whisper of static crackled in her earpiece. Torres' voice, low, afraid. "Captain, we can't hold much longer." Her eyes stayed on the scope. She swallowed. She whispered back, barely audible, "You'll hold because you have to." Her finger pressed the trigger halfway. And then she stopped. Because across the scope, in that faint outline of a man she knew too well, she saw a pause, a shift. He had lowered his rifle. Deliberate, slow. Like an invitation or a warning. The past and present collided in her chest, sharp enough to steal her breath. She knew this wasn't over. He wasn't sparing them. He was choosing, deciding, setting the stage for something bigger. And the worst part. Mara couldn't tell if she was more terrified or relieved. She slid back down the ridge, chest heaving though she forced her breath steady. She rejoined the others in shadow. Avery looked at her with disbelief, Harper with suspicion, Torres with desperate hope. "What happened?" Harper demanded. "Nothing," she said flatly. But inside, her mind screamed. Nothing wasn't true. Everything had happened. She had just stared into the scope of the man who had destroyed her family, and he had seen her. And for reasons she couldn't yet grasp, he had let her live. They moved before dawn, slipping past the barn, skirting the open fields. Reed was still out there, waiting, somewhere beyond the dark. But Mara knew now the mission wasn't just about him. It was about Elias. And the question that burned in her chest with every step forward. When the time came, would she pull the trigger? Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire? The shots had stopped hours ago, but the echoes lingered. Every step the team took seemed wrapped in the memory of them, as if the night itself carried the sound. Mara led with measured steps, her body sinking into the rhythm of shadows. Behind her, the team stumbled through the fields, each man dragging his own fear like a pack too heavy to carry. The storm overhead had never broken. Clouds pressed low, the sky swollen and gray, threatening but withholding. The air smelled of wet earth, copper, and smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then fell silent. Reed was out there, alive maybe, and every minute they lingered, the chance of retrieving him shrank. But Mara's mind wasn't only on the officer. It was on Elias, the man behind the scope, the ghost she had felt more than seen. She hadn't told the team. Not yet. She told herself it was to protect their focus, but the truth sat heavier. She was afraid of their eyes if they knew. Afraid they would see her as compromised. Afraid they would see weakness in a woman who had spent her whole life proving otherwise. They reached a creek bed before dawn, the kind of shallow gash in the earth that offered just enough cover to catch a breath. Harper dropped down first, wiping sweat from his brow. His frustration had turned bitter in the hours since the barn. "This is insane," he muttered. "We're walking blind. Reed could be dead already. Hell, maybe this whole thing's a setup." Torres crouched, pulling his cross out again, fingers trembling as he kissed the metal. His lips moved fast, whispers spilling without pause. Mara wondered who he prayed for more, Reed or himself. Avery leaned against the bank, pale, sweat-soaked, pressing at the bandage Mara had tied hours before. "Not dead yet," he grunted, though every word cost him. His eyes flicked at her, a small gratitude buried under pain. Harper's voice cut back in sharp. "We should call exfil, wait for reinforcements. This is suicide." Mara's gaze found him steady, unblinking. "Reinforcements won't come. We move forward." Harper bristled, his jaw tight. "Easy for you to say. You're not bleeding out, you're not." "Enough," Mara said, quieter, but with a weight that landed harder than shouting. The creek fell silent, except for the water trickling over stone. Torres looked at her with wide, searching eyes. "Do you think he's still alive?" She could have lied, could have promised, but she had buried too many to believe in promises anymore. "He has to be," she answered instead. It wasn't comfort, it was command, and Torres nodded as if the steel in her voice was enough to keep him moving. They pushed deeper into the valley, where the land folded in on itself, where abandoned villages sagged like broken teeth in the earth. The walls of one house still bore painted flowers, faded and chipped, reminders of a life erased. A child's toy car lay half buried in the dirt. Avery stopped to look at it, just for a second, before limping forward again without a word. Every ruin they passed added weight, not just of war but of absence, the way life evaporated and left only shells. Mara felt it in her chest, not absence but echoes. Every ruined doorway reminded her of the night her brother didn't come back, of the way her father never looked her in the eye again, of Elia's disappearing into the smoke of betrayal. She adjusted the strap of her rifle and pressed forward. By midday, the team reached a ridge overlooking a compound. 4 buildings, half-collapsed walls, a rusting truck in the yard, faint movement inside. Mara lowered her scope, jaw tight. Reed could be there, or he could be bones beneath it. Avery breathed hard. That's it, that's where they'd hold him. Harper frowned. "Or it's bait, whole damn place screams trap." Mara's silence stretched. Both men were right. Through her scope she saw 2 guards, but the stillness of the compound told her more. If Reed was alive, he was inside, and if Elias was nearby, this would be where he waited. Torres asked softly, "What if it's both?" The boy's voice cracked, young and afraid. His question cut deeper because it carried truth. What if it was both, Reed alive, and the trap waiting for anyone who tried to take him? As the sun pressed weakly through the clouds, Mara weighed her options. They could wait for nightfall, but Reed's time was already bleeding away. They could go loud, but they wouldn't survive it. That left only one choice. "We go in quiet," she said. "Minimal shots, get Reed, get out." Harper cursed under his breath, but he didn't argue. Torres swallowed hard and nodded. Avery, pale and shaking, still managed a grim smile. "Quiet, huh? Haven't heard that in years." Mara's eyes lingered on Avery. His strength impressed her. Pain ate at him, yet he still carried himself forward. But she also saw the tremor in his hands. He wouldn't last forever, and if she didn't act fast, his blood would be on her hands too. They moved at dusk. Shadows stretched long, folding over the compound like cloaks. Mara led, steps precise, each placement calculated. Torres followed her movements exactly, like a child learning to walk. Avery and Harper spread out, covering flanks. The first guard fell silently, Mara's knife sliding clean across his throat, her hand catching his weight before it hit ground. She laid him down gently, like she'd done 100 times before. The second guard turned just as Torres slipped. The boy's foot hit loose gravel, a crack too loud. The guard spun, eyes wide, mouth opening. Mara was faster, one suppressed shot, a whisper of death. The guard dropped before sound could escape. Torres froze, chest heaving, guilt painted across his face. Mara's eyes caught his for a fraction of a second. She didn't scold him, she just nodded, steady. Keep moving. They slipped inside the compound. The smell hit first, sweat, blood, stale food, the stink of captivity. A faint groan echoed from the far room. Avery's eyes flicked to Mara's. She nodded once. They moved. In the corner, chained to a pipe, was Daniel Reed. His face swollen, lips split, one eye nearly closed, but his chest rose and fell, alive. Torres whispered a prayer. Harper muttered, "Holy hell." Reed's gaze found Mara first. Even half-conscious, something in her silence drew him. His cracked lips parted, barely audible. Too late. Her stomach knotted. Avery crouched, cutting chains with a hiss of metal. "We're here now. You're coming with us." Reed shook his head weakly. "Trap already set." The words were almost lost, but Mara heard them. And before she could process, before she could respond, the first explosion ripped through the yard. The world split into fire and sound. Walls shuddered, dust choked the air. Shouts rose outside, boots thundered. Harper shouted, "They're here." Mara pulled Reed to his feet, slinging his arm over her shoulder. His weight was dead stone, but she carried it. Always she carried it. Gunfire cut through the compound walls. Splinters rained. Torres panicked, firing back blind, his hands shaking. Avery braced himself in the doorway, returning shots through gritted teeth, blood soaking his bandage again. Mara dragged Reed toward the rear exit. Her ears rang, her lungs burned. Her chest screamed with the memory of Elias' lowered rifle on the ridge. This wasn't random, this was him, this was Elias. And the trap had just closed. They broke into the night, bullets chasing. Reed stumbled, barely conscious, his weight almost too much. Torres covered them, firing wild. Avery limped but refused to fall. Harper screamed orders no one followed. They reached the creek again, diving for cover. Reed collapsed, coughing blood. Torres sobbed prayers. Harper shouted into the radio, begging for exfil. Mara pressed Reed's face up, forcing his eyes open. "Stay with me. You're not done, you hear me? You're not done." Reed's lips trembled. "You don't understand." "What?" she demanded. His eyes flicked to hers, full of something between terror and pity. "It's not just them, he's here." Her heart stopped. "Elias." Reed coughed, choked on blood, forced the words. "He wants you." And Mara knew this mission wasn't about Reed. Not really, not anymore. It was about her. The night swallowed them whole. The creek bed was no refuge now, it was a coffin. Bullets slammed into the dirt, churning mud into spray. Every second felt like the last. Mara pressed Reed against the bank, her own body shielding his. His breath rattled against her ear, shallow and fast. Avery crawled up beside them, pale as ash, his bandage soaked through. He coughed hard, blood spattering the dirt. Still, he raised his weapon and fired into the dark. The stubbornness of a man who refused to lie down, even when his body begged him to. Torres knelt a few feet away, hands shaking so badly his aim wandered. He clutched his cross in one hand, rifle in the other, whispering faster than his trigger finger moved. "Protect us, protect us, protect us." "Focus," Mara hissed at him, but he didn't hear. His prayer drowned everything. Harper slid into the mud beside them, wild-eyed, his voice cutting above the gunfire. "This is on you. You hear me? You dragged us here. You brought us straight into this." Mara met his eyes, sharp, unflinching. "Shut up and fight." his face twisted with rage, but the argument died under the whistle of incoming fire. They had seconds before the enemy pushed closer. Mara's mind burned through calculations. Stay pinned here and they'd be buried. Move and they risked exposure. Either way, time was against them. She made the call. We move east through the trees now. East, Harper barked. Are you insane? That's toward the hills. They won't expect it. They're everywhere. Exactly. It didn't make sense to him. It didn't need to. She pulled Reed up, his body a dead weight against hers, and began to drag. Harper cursed but followed, because in the chaos, instinct obeyed leadership even if the heart rebelled. They burst from the creek bed, sprinting across open ground. The sky tore with tracer fire. Dirt exploded at their heels. Mara didn't think, didn't feel, she only moved. One step, then another. Reed's weight pulled her sideways, but she refused to let him go. Avery limped, gritting his teeth, his weapon spitting bursts as he staggered after them. Torres stumbled, firing blind, muttering prayers between sobs. Harper screamed for covering fire, his voice cracked and desperate. The trees swallowed them at last. Branches clawed at their faces, roots threatened their footing, but the darkness offered cover. Gunfire chased, then thinned, then finally faded to echoes. They collapsed in a shallow clearing, lungs heaving, hearts hammering. Reed fell against a tree, his body shaking. Mara knelt beside him, hands pressing at his chest, feeling the weakness beneath his bones. His eyes rolled, barely conscious. Harper dropped to his knees, mud streaked across his face. We can't keep this up. He's done. Avery's done. We're all done. Avery coughed, spitting blood into his hand, but still rasped, Not done. Shut up, Harper snapped. You can barely stand. Neither can you, Avery shot back, his voice weak but cutting. Mara stood, her silence more commanding than a shout. She looked at Harper, then at the others. We keep moving. Harper laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Keep moving, toward what? Toward him. The words froze the air. Mara's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? Harper's eyes narrowed. You know damn well this wasn't about Reed. It never was. You're dragging us into your war. Torres' head snapped up. What does he mean? Avery stared at Mara, confusion flickering through his pain. Mara's chest ached, but she didn't answer. Couldn't, not now. Harper pressed on, voice sharp. The sniper, the ghost on the ridge, he's not after us. He's after you. The silence after was louder than the gunfire had been. Torres' voice cracked. Is that true? Mara didn't look at him. She checked Reed's pulse, focused on the rhythm under her fingers. Anything but the boy's pleading eyes. Mara, Avery said softly. His voice wasn't accusing but searching. Tell us. She couldn't, words wouldn't come. And in her silence, she felt the rift widen. The night dragged on. They took shelter in a ruined farmhouse, its roof collapsed, walls barely standing. Wind whispered through broken beams. The air smelled of mold and dust. Torres curled in a corner, knees to his chest, cross clutched tight. He rocked, whispers spilling endlessly. Not prayers now, but fragments of home, of family. His mother's name, his sister's laughter. Avery sat with his back against the wall, breathing shallow, pale as death. Mara bound his wound again, her hands steady though her chest twisted with fear. He winced but didn't complain. His eyes lingered on her face, searching, maybe for answers, maybe for comfort. Harper stood at the doorway, rifle ready, his body stiff with distrust. He never stopped glancing at Mara, suspicion carved deep into his features. Reed lay unconscious, every breath fragile. Mara sat apart, her rifle across her lap, eyes scanning the shadows beyond the doorway. But her thoughts weren't on the dark. They were on Elia's. She remembered his voice, calm and cold, the night he left. One day you'll see. It's not about sides, it's about survival. He had turned his back on everything on her. She had sworn she'd never let him haunt her again. And yet here he was, pulling her back into his orbit. Every step she had taken in this valley felt like one he had planned for her. And Harper was right. This mission had never really been about Reed. Not to Elias, it was about her. The hours bled together. Torres finally cried himself to a fitful sleep, cross clutched tight. Avery's head lolled, his breath uneven. Harper never left the doorway, silent, watchful. Mara stayed awake, listening. The night pressed heavy. Every creak of wood, every sigh of wind felt like a footstep. Then she heard it. A faint sound, deliberate outside. She raised her hand, signaling silence. Harper stiffened, rifle up. Avery forced his eyes open, weak but alert. Torres stirred, clutching his weapon. The sound came again, a scrape against stone, a pause, a shift. Mara's heart pounded. She knew that rhythm, the patience, the precision. Elias. A voice drifted from the dark, calm, controlled, close. Mara. Every muscle in her body froze. The others stared at her, eyes wide. Harper's face twisted in vindication. Torres looked terrified. Avery's gaze locked on her, searching. The voice came again, soft, almost tender. You've run long enough. Mara gripped her rifle tighter, her breath shallow. Memories tore through her, his face lit by firelight, his voice whispering orders beside hers, the night he vanished into smoke. Harper whispered harshly, "Who the hell is that?" Mara didn't answer, couldn't. The silence stretched, broken only by the wind through broken beams. Then Elias' voice cut through once more, steady and sure. "It's time to come home." The night was a trap of silence. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. The broken farmhouse felt like the last fragile shelter before the storm swallowed them whole. And then he stepped into view. Not a blur, not a shadow, a man, calm, certain. He stood just beyond the doorway, moonlight cutting across his face. The same sharp jaw, the same unflinching eyes. Time had hardened him, but Mara knew every line. Elias. Her stomach knotted, the air catching in her throat. She had seen him in nightmares, in memories she wished she could bury, but never like this. Never so close she could hear the slow rhythm of his breath. Harper's rifle snapped up. "Who the hell are you?" Elias' gaze didn't leave Mara. He didn't even acknowledge the weapon pointed at him. "She hasn't told you." Torres' hand shook on his rifle. "T told us what?" Avery's eyes stayed on Mara, pained, waiting. She gripped her weapon tighter, but her arms felt heavy, as if the weight of years pressed them down. Elias' voice was smooth, low. "That she knows me better than anyone, that once she stood at my side." The room went still. Harper's face twisted. "What is this, some kind of setup?" Mara forced herself to speak, each word scraping her throat. "He was one of us, once." "Was?" Harper spat. Elias smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. "Until I realized fighting for flags meant nothing. Survival meant everything. She knows. She saw it too, she just couldn't admit it." Torres shook his head, whispering, "This is wrong, this can't." Elias' eyes softened as they settled on Mara again. "You don't have to drag these boys to their graves. Walk away, with me." The words pierced deeper than the gunfire had. Because part of her, the part she hated most, still remembered the nights when they whispered plans, when his voice steadied her in the chaos. She had trusted him once, trusted him more than anyone. And he had left. Avery coughed, the sound wet, breaking the silence. "Mara, is he lying?" She swallowed hard. Her chest ached. She wanted to tell them it was all lies, that Elias was just a ghost twisting the truth, but her silence lingered too long. Harper's voice cut sharp. You knew this was personal, and you dragged us into it." Mara snapped back, her voice low, fierce. "I didn't ask for him to be here." "But you knew it might happen," Harper pressed, stepping closer, finger twitching on his trigger. "This whole op, was it ever about Reed, or just about him?" Elias chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Listen to yourselves. Dying for a man who won't live to see morning. She's the only reason you've made it this far." His words cut deeper because they carried truth. Mara had carried them step after step, while Harper faltered, while Torres shook, while Avery bled. And they knew it, but knowing it didn't ease the fracture now tearing through them. Reed stirred weakly, his eyes fluttering open. His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't trust." Then his breath faltered and his head rolled. Mara pressed against his wound, desperate, but his blood stained her hands. Elia's voice dropped softer, almost kind. "You can't save him, you know it. Come with me before you lose everything else." Mara's throat tightened. She thought of her brother's name carved into stone, of the faces she had failed before, of the endless weight she carried. Was Elia's right? Was she just dragging them toward death? Torres spoke suddenly, voice trembling but firm. "You left us. You turned your back. That's all we need to know." For the first time, Elia's gaze shifted from Mara. He looked at the boy, barely more than a child. His eyes hardened. "And what has loyalty given you? Fear? Death? Look at your hands, son. You're already shaking." Torres' grip faltered, his rifle lowering a fraction. Mara's voice cut sharp. "Don't listen to him." But doubt had already sunk its claws into the boy. Avery coughed again, his face pale. "Mara," his voice was weak but steady. "We don't need explanations. We just need to know whose side you're on, right now." Her eyes burned. Every memory, every scar, every choice pressed down at once. She looked at Elias, the man she had trusted, the man who had betrayed her. And she looked at Avery, broken, bleeding, but still fighting. Her voice came low, steady, not his. Elias' jaw tightened. For the first time his calm cracked. "So you choose death." Mara raised her rifle, her hand steady despite the storm in her chest. "No, I choose them." The world exploded. Elias moved first, a flash of motion vanishing into the night as gunfire shattered the farmhouse walls. Bullets tore through rotted wood, splinters raining down. "Down," Mara shouted, pushing Torres flat. Avery fired back from the ground, each shot slow but deliberate. Harper unleashed bursts, rage fueling his aim. But the silence after was worse. Elias was gone, melted into the dark. Mara's chest heaved, her pulse a drum. She scanned the shadows, but nothing stirred. Just the whisper of wind, the creak of broken beams. Torres whispered, voice shaking, "He could have killed us. Why didn't he?" Mara's voice was hollow, "Because he's not done." The night dragged, heavy and unending. None of them slept. Torres kept whispering prayers. Harper paced, anger barely contained. Avery leaned against the wall, fighting to keep his eyes open. Mara sat still, listening, every nerve raw. She knew Elias, knew how he thought. He wouldn't strike in rage. He would wait, bleed them, break them piece by piece. And he would aim for her last. The thought burned, but she welcomed it. Better her than them. Yet deep down, she knew the truth Elias had spoken. She was the reason they were still alive, which meant she was also the reason they were still in danger. The weight pressed heavier than ever. Harper broke the silence, voice sharp, bitter. "You should have told us, all of it." Mara met his gaze, tired but firm. "Would you have followed me if I had?" He didn't answer, he didn't need to. His silence said enough. Avery's voice came faint but steady. "Doesn't matter now, we're here. Question is how we get out." Mara looked at him, then at Torres, then back at the door where Elias had stood. Her chest ached, but her voice came calm. "We finished the mission." Harper scoffed. "What mission? Reed's gone." Mara's eyes hardened. "Then we carry him, his life, his weight. That's what we do." No one spoke, but in their silence something shifted, fragile, temporary, but real. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes, the sound of movement, of patience, of someone who hadn't gone far. Elias was still there, waiting. And Mara knew the storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. The valley felt endless. By dawn, their bodies were more shadow than flesh, every step an act of defiance against collapse. Boots dragged through mud. Breaths came ragged, shallow. The hills rose ahead, jagged silhouettes against the pale sky, promising cover but demanding everything in return. Reed was carried between Harper and Mara now. His head lolled, skin clammy, blood soaking through every bandage they had left. His breaths rattled, fragile, uneven. Every sound felt like a countdown. Torres stumbled behind, lips moving. No longer prayers, just names, his sister, his father, over and over, as if saying them might pull him home. Avery leaned on his rifle like a crutch. His wound bled through fresh cloth, staining every step. Still he moved, teeth clenched, eyes locked ahead. But Mara could feel it. They were breaking, and Elias knew it. The first sign came with the birds. A sudden burst of wings from the trees to their left, scattering upward all at once. Too sudden, too precise. Mara froze, hand up. The team halted, breaths heavy, hearts thudding against ribs. Silence stretched. Then a crack, sharp, measured. A bullet tore bark from a tree inches from Torres' head. The boy yelped, dropping flat. Harper cursed, dragging Reed down into the grass. Mara scanned the ridge. Nothing, no flash, no shape, just the memory of sound echoing through the hills. Avery spat blood, voice rasping. He's toying with us. Mara's jaw clenched. Elias wasn't killing, not yet. He was reminding them he was there, hurting them. And in her chest, a sick certainty grew. This wasn't just about Reed. It wasn't even about them. It was about her. They crawled low, every muscle burning. Hours blurred into one another. Hunger gnawed, thirst cracked lips. The sun pressed heavy. Torres' whispers grew louder. He's not going to stop. He's not going to stop. Shut it, Harper snapped. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot, rage masking fear. You want to draw him right to us. Torres' hands shook, his cross slipping between sweaty fingers. He already knows where we are. Mara stopped, turning to the boy. Her voice came soft but steady. Look at me. He didn't. His eyes darted everywhere but her. Torres, look. Finally his gaze met hers, wide and drowning. You're still breathing. That means you're not done. Don't give him what he wants. The boy swallowed, nodding shakily, but the doubt in his eyes stayed. By nightfall they found a cave, shallow, damp, barely big enough to crawl inside, but it was cover, and for now that was enough. They collapsed inside, bodies trembling, breaths ragged. Harper dropped Reed against the wall, muttering curses under his breath. He ripped open his pack, searching for anything to stop the bleeding. Nothing left. Avery leaned back, his skin gray, his voice barely above a whisper. He's not gonna make it. Mara's chest tightened. She pressed Reed's hand, feeling the weak pulse flicker beneath his skin. She wanted to argue, to say he'd survive, but the truth clawed too deep. Torres curled in the corner, cross clutched tight. His whispers had turned angry now, desperate, bargaining. Harper paced the entrance, rifle in hand, eyes burning. This is suicide. We're bleeding out one by one. And he jabbed a finger at Mara. She's the reason. Mara didn't flinch. She met his fury with silence. Harper's voice cracked. You knew him. You knew this was personal. And now he's hunting us because of you. Avery coughed, blood flecking his lips. His voice rasped but carried weight. Enough. Harper turned, jaw tight. Don't defend her. I'm not, Avery said. I'm saying it doesn't matter. We're here. Blame won't change that. But Harper's glare didn't fade. His rage had found its anchor, and it was Mara. Later, when the others drifted into uneasy silence, Mara sat at the mouth of the cave, rifle across her lap. The valley stretched before her, dark and endless. Her mind replayed Elias' voice. It's time to come home. Home. Once she thought he had been that. His steadiness in the chaos, his voice in the silence, his hand at her back. She had believed in him. Until the night he vanished into smoke, leaving her to bury what was left of their team. Now here he was again, not as a ghost, but as the storm itself. Her throat tightened. She whispered into the night words too quiet for the others. "I won't follow you, not again." And though the wind carried no reply, she felt him out there, listening, waiting. At dawn, Reed's breathing stopped. It was quiet, so quiet Mara almost missed it. She pressed her ear to his chest, waiting. Nothing, just silence. Her stomach hollowed. Torres wept softly, his cross pressed to his lips. Harper cursed, punching the stone wall until his knuckles bled. Avery closed his eyes, his face etched with sorrow but no surprise. Mara sat still, the weight of Reed's body against her knees, the stillness of his hand in hers. She had carried so many, too many, and now another name would etch itself into her memory, another weight added to the load she could never put down. Harper spat bitterly. "We're done, mission's dead, Reed's dead, we go home." "No," Mara said quietly. Harper spun on her. "What did you just say?" She lifted her head, eyes steady despite the ache in her chest. "We carry him out, alive or dead, we carry him." Harper's face twisted, rage and disbelief. "For what? For a corpse." "For dignity," Mara said softly. Silence stretched. Torres wiped his face, staring at her. Avery opened his eyes, watching her steady gaze. Even Harper, furious, broken, didn't argue right away. Because deep down, they knew she was right. They built a stretcher from broken wood and rope. Every step after that was agony. Reed's weight slowed them, dragged them, threatened to break them. But Mara never faltered. She bore his weight as if it were her own. And Elias watched. She knew he did. The first shot cracked at midday. Not at them, at the stretcher. Splinters burst, rope frayed, Reed's body nearly spilling to the dirt. Torres screamed, scrambling to hold him steady. Harper cursed, firing blindly into the ridge. Mara dragged Reed back up, her shoulders burning. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Move now." They staggered forward, Reed between them, gunfire echoing from the hills. Elias wasn't aiming to kill. Not yet. He was aiming to break them, to break her. By nightfall, exhaustion devoured them. Every step was heavier, every breath harder. Elias' shots came at intervals, deliberate, cruel, just enough to remind them he controlled the game. In the dark, Harper's voice broke. "He's going to kill us all, one by one, and you know it." Mara didn't answer. Her silence was admission. Avery's whisper came weak but sharp. "Then let him try." And Mara knew. The storm was closing. Elias was circling closer, and soon she'd have no choice but to face him. Not for herself, but for them. The night was alive with whispers. Wind sighed through the trees, carrying fragments of sound, footsteps, branches breaking, or only their frayed minds inventing ghosts. Mara lay in the dirt, every nerve awake. Sleep was impossible. Reed's stretcher lay between them, his body wrapped, silent, already cooling. Torres muttered prayers again. Harper paced like a wolf caged too long, and Avery coughed into the crook of his arm, each spasm raw and wet. Then came the whistle. High, sharp, deliberate. 3 notes, rising, falling, a tune she knew. Her heart froze. Elias' signal, one they'd used years ago to regroup when the dark swallowed them. Now it was mockery. Torres whimpered. Harper raised his rifle, aiming blindly into the night. "Come out, coward." Silence answered, then a voice smooth, calm, close. "Coward?" Elias' laugh echoed between the trees. "I taught you better than that, Harper. I taught all of you better, and look at you now, hiding in the dirt." Mara closed her eyes. His voice wrapped around her like smoke, familiar and poisonous all at once. "Leave them out of this," she called, her voice low but steady. "Oh, Mara," his tone softened, almost tender. "You don't get to make demands, not anymore." A branch cracked in the dark. A shadow shifted, but by the time Harper spun toward it, there was nothing. Torres trembled. "He's everywhere. He's already inside my head." Elias chuckled as if hearing. "Smart boy." Mara's stomach tightened. This wasn't a hunt anymore. It was theater. and Elias was directing every scene. At dawn, they moved again. Reed's stretcher dragged like a chain. Harper's temper boiled hotter with every step. This is madness. We should have burned the body, left him, anything but this. No, Mara said, voice sharp. We carry him. Harper spat. For what? Some symbol. He's dead, Mara, just like the rest of us will be if you keep pretending we've got a chance. Enough, Avery rasped. His face was pale, sweat soaking his shirt. We don't stop. But Harper wasn't done. He turned on Mara, fury twisting his features. This is what he wants, to watch us bleed out for nothing. And you, his voice cracked, you're still following him, even now. Mara stopped dead. Her eyes met Harper's cold steel. Say that again. Harper's chest heaved. His finger jabbed at her. You still want his approval. That's why you're dragging us through hell. That's why you can't let go. You think if you prove yourself now, it'll erase what he became. The words landed like knives, because they weren't entirely lies. Silence stretched. Torres stared at the ground. Avery leaned heavier on his rifle. Mara forced the anger down, speaking through clenched teeth. I don't care about his approval. I care about not leaving another man behind. Harper scoffed. Keep telling yourself that. Before she could answer, the shot came. Wood exploded inches from her feet. They dropped instantly, instinct snapping them flat to the dirt. Another shot, this one closer. Then the whistle again, short, teasing. Torres broke first. He scrambled to his knees, firing blindly into the trees, screams tearing from his throat. Stop it, get out of my head. Harper tackled him, wrenching the rifle away. You'll kill us all, idiot. Torres thrashed, sobbing. He's right there. But there was nothing, only trees, shadows, silence. Mara dragged Torres down, gripping his face hard enough to force his eyes on hers. Listen to me. He wants you like this. Don't give him what he wants. But the boy's tears kept coming, his chest heaving, his hands shaking. And Mara felt it. They were unraveling faster now. That night, Elias pushed harder. They'd found a narrow ravine for cover, walls rising on both sides. But every sound echoed, rocks shifting, twigs snapping, and always the voice. Sometimes it came from the left, sometimes the right, sometimes whispering directly in Mara's ear, though no one was there. Mara, soft, intimate. Do you remember Kandahar, the dust in our teeth, the bodies in the street, and the way you looked at me when I said we'd make it home? You believed me then. She pressed her palms to her ears. It didn't help. Do you believe me now? Her pulse thundered. She wanted to scream back, to fire blindly into the dark, but she couldn't. That was the trap. Instead, she whispered into the dirt, I'm not yours anymore. A laugh drifted back, low, mocking, aren't you? By morning, Avery could barely walk. His wound had worsened, blood soaking through every cloth. His breath rattled. Each step dragged slower. Mara offered her shoulder. He leaned on her, his weight heavy, his voice a rasp. Don't waste me. Her throat tightened. Don't you dare. He gave her the faintest smile. I always liked your stubbornness. Then his legs buckled. She caught him, lowering him to the dirt. His eyes fluttered, lips pale. Harper cursed, packing. We can't carry two, we can't. We will, Mara snapped. Torres shook his head, panic rising. He'll kill us all before we take one more step. And as if summoned, Elias' voice rolled through the valley, calm, patient. Listen to them, Mara. They're telling you the truth. You can't save them, you never could, but you can save yourself. Harper raised his rifle, screaming into the hills. Show yourself, you bastard. A shot answered, sparking off stone inches from his head. He staggered back, trembling, eyes wide. And Mara knew Elias was no longer waiting, he was closing in. That night the choice came. They huddled in the dark, two wounded men between them, Elias' shadow circling ever closer. Harper's voice was low, deadly. We split, it's the only way. You take Torres, I'll take Avery. We move separate, he can't follow both. No, Mara said instantly. Yes, Harper snapped, unless you want us all dead by dawn. Torres' wide eyes flicked between them, fear plain. He'll find us either way. Mara's fists clenched. Splitting meant weakness. It meant Elias could pick them apart faster, but keeping together meant dragging two dying men through fire with no cover left. Elias' whistle cut through the night, low, slow, mocking. Harper leaned close, eyes burning. You decide, Mara, right now, them or us. And she realized the truth. Elias had forced her to this. Not with bullets, but with choices that would carve her soul apart. She closed her eyes. Reed's weight, Avery's smile, Torres' trembling faith, Harper's rage. And Elias' voice, steady as ever, waiting for her answer. Her whisper came hoarse but firm. We don't split. Harper's face twisted. Then you've just killed us all. But Mara held her ground, heart pounding. Because deep down she knew, Elias wasn't hunting them. He was hunting her. And as long as she stayed on her feet, she still had one chance left. One chance to turn the storm back on him. The dawn came thin, gray, almost reluctant. Mara hadn't slept. None of them had. Avery drifted in and out, each breath weaker than the last. Torres had stopped talking, his eyes vacant, haunted. Harper sat rigid, rifle across his knees, every muscle wound tight. But Mara felt it in her bones. Today it ended. The air carried a weight. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the birds were silent. And then, without prelude, he was there. Elias stepped from the trees as if he'd simply been part of them all along. No theatrics now. No whispers, no whistles. Just a man walking into the open, calm as a priest approaching an altar. He wore no helmet, his rifle slung loose. His face older, lined but still sharp, eyes bright and fixed on her. Mara, he said softly, you made it further than I expected. Harper raised his weapon instantly, finger tight on the trigger. I'll kill you where you stand. Elias' smile was small, pitying. You. No, you're already mine. He didn't even glance at Torres, who flinched, shrinking smaller. His gaze never left Mara. I knew you wouldn't abandon them, he said, even when it doomed you. Her throat tightened, she forced the words out. Why? Elias tilted his head, as if surprised she didn't know. Because it was the only way to prove it. Prove what? That I was right. His eyes softened, terrifying in their tenderness. That loyalty is a disease. That men like Reed, Avery, even you're wasted, carrying dead weight. I freed myself from it, and I wanted you to see. Her stomach knotted. His voice was the same as it had been years ago, when he'd pulled her out of rubble, when he'd told her she was strong enough to survive. It cut deeper than any bullet. You killed your own, she whispered. I released them, Elias corrected, his tone almost gentle. They were chains and you're still shackled, look at you. He gestured. Reed's wrapped body slung across Harper's back, Avery gasping against the dirt, Torres trembling. Dragging corpses into the grave with you. Why? For honor, for ghosts. Mara felt Harper twitch beside her, the rifle trembling in his hands. She laid a hand on the barrel, lowering it. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Because they're not chains, she said. They're the only reason I'm still here. Elias' eyes narrowed just slightly. Say that again. They're not weight, Mara said, louder now, her voice hard. They're the proof of who we are, of what we carry. You ran from it, I won't. For the first time, his calm cracked. Just a flicker, his jaw tightening, his hand flexing near his weapon. Then he smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then you've already chosen your grave. The fight came fast. A blur of movement, his rifle up, her snapping to meet it. The crack of shots shattered the silence. Bark exploded from trees. Torres dove flat, screaming. Harper fired wildly, rage spilling into bullets. But Elias moved like water, smooth, predictable only to Mara. She had studied him for years. Every drill, every maneuver, every tell. She knew the shift of his shoulders before he pivoted, the rhythm of his breath before he squeezed the trigger. And he knew hers. They circled, predator and prey indistinguishable. A shot grazed her cheek, hot and sharp. She dropped, rolled, returned fire. His vest sparked a glancing hit, but he didn't falter. "Mara," he called over the chaos, voice steady even as bullets tore the ground. "You're not fighting me, you're fighting yourself." Her teeth clenched, she shoved the thought away. Focus, one breath, one shot. But Avery's cough broke her concentration, a wet, rattling sound. Her eyes flicked, just a fraction. Elias saw, he always saw. The shot slammed into Avery's chest. The cry tore from her throat before she could stop it. She crawled to him, pressing her hands against the wound, but his blood flowed warm between her fingers. His eyes fluttered, lips moving. She bent close, desperate. "Don't stop," his voice was faint, "end him." And then nothing. Her chest hollowed, the world narrowed. Elias' voice carried across the clearing. "See, he was already gone, I just spared him the suffering." Harper roared, charging, gun blazing. Elias dropped him with a single shot to the leg, Harper collapsing with a scream, weapon skidding away. Torres sobbed openly now, rocking against the dirt. And Mara rose. Slow, deliberate. Her hands shook, blood still on them, but her eyes were steady. She stepped forward, rifle raised. And Elias smiled, almost proud. "Yes," he whispered, "finally." The last exchange was not fast, it was slow, measured. Each moved with care, no wasted motion. Two mirrors circling. He fired, she sidestepped. She fired, he deflected, grazing his arm. Every sound rang sharp, every breath echoed. Then a stumble. Elias' foot caught on a root, barely but enough. Mara saw the opening, her shot snapped. It struck his shoulder, spinning him back, rifle slipping from his grasp. He fell hard, dust rising. Silence crashed in. Torres gasped. Harper groaned, dragging himself toward his weapon. Mara advanced slowly, rifle still trained. Elias lay on his back, blood soaking through his shirt, but his eyes burned alive. He laughed softly, choking. "There it is, the Mara I built." She stood over him, breath ragged, weapon steady. "Don't give me that," she said. But his voice was calm, almost tender. "You think this proves me wrong? Look at you, standing because you carry their ghosts, because of me." Her finger tightened on the trigger. He coughed, blood on his lips, but his smile never faded. "Do it, be free." Her vision blurred with tears. The weight of Reed, Avery, Harper, Torres, all pressing on her shoulders, all watching. Her whisper trembled. "No, I'm not killing you for freedom. I'm carrying them, and that's what you'll never understand." His smile faltered, just for a moment. And she lowered her rifle. Elias' eyes widened, confusion flickering where certainty had lived for years. She stepped back. "You don't get to choose how this ends." Harper groaned again, dragging himself closer. "Finish him, damn it." But Mara shook her head. "No, not like this." Torres stared, stunned, as if he couldn't comprehend sparing the monster. Elias lay gasping, staring at her as though seeing her for the first time. And in that silence, his power drained away. He wasn't a ghost, not a god, just a man, broken, alone. And for the first time, Mara felt the weight lift. Not because he was dead, but because he no longer owned her. They left him there. Harper half-dragged, half-hobbled on her shoulder. Torres stumbled behind, eyes hollow. Reed and Avery's bodies they could not carry further. Mara buried them as best she could, her hands raw, dirt under her nails. Elias watched from the ground, bleeding, fatting. He said nothing. The forest swallowed his silence. And Mara walked on. By the time the evac finally reached them, the sun was high, burning bright. The helicopter's blades whipped the dirt, noise deafening. Harper collapsed into the arms of the medics. Torres clung to the side like a drowning man. Myra climbed in last, pausing once to look back at the forest. She thought of Elia's lying alone. She thought of Avery's last breath, of Reed's silence, of Harper's rage, of Torres' trembling faith. And she thought of the weight she still carried, heavy, permanent. But not chains. Proof. She sat down, closing her eyes as the helicopter lifted, the ground falling away beneath them. No words came, only silence. And sometimes that was enough. Because dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't demand. It simply carries. Even when it breaks you.